Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. We start our news bulletin from Pakistan, which has voiced grave concerns over Israel's plans to illegally annex parts of Palestinian territories. At the weekly press briefing in Islamabad, Foreign Office spokesperson Aisha Faruqi said Pakistan calls for the establishment of a viable, independent state of Palestine. Faruqi said Tel Aviv's plans to annex Palestinian land violate international laws. She added that West Bank and the Jordan Valley are Palestinian territories illegally occupied by Israel decades ago. Faruqi also condemned India's extrajudicial killings of innocent people in fake encounters in occupied Kashmir. She said Indian forces murdered 33 Kashmiris last month while pellet guns were used against people staging protests against Indian atrocities. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has formally notified the president of forming a government after 18 months-long political deadlock. In a letter to President Reuven Rivlin, Netanyahu said he has formed a government which he will present to the parliament today. Netanyahu was tasked by Rivlin to put together a new government after his former rival Benny Gantz failed to do so following the elections. Last month, Netanyahu and Gantz signed a deal to form a power-sharing government. Under the agreement, Netanyahu will serve as Prime Minister for at least 18 months before being replaced by Gantz. While Gantz will serve as a Defense Minister and alternate Prime Minister, a title does not that existed before in Israeli politics. Moving on, Iran has rejected U.S. threats of triggering a return of all UN sanctions if the Security Council does not extend an arms embargo. Speaking to reporters, Foreign Minister Jawad Zarif said foolish claims by Washington are nothing new. His comments came after U.S. Special Envoy Brian Hook said Washington would ensure the ban on Tehran remains one way or another. The UN embargo is due to expire in October under the 2015 Iran nuclear deal that US President Donald Trump quit in 2018. In Afghanistan, 5 people are killed and 19 others wounded in a car bomb blast near a military court in Paktia province's Gardez city. Interior Ministry spokesperson Tariq Arai said the blast is the second in a series of attacks in Kabul's Dasht-e-Barchi and Nangarhar provinces. He said details about the incident are yet to be unveiled. Meanwhile, the Taliban have claimed the responsibility, saying dozens of mercenaries were killed in a suicide attack on a military club. Spain's daily coronavirus death toll has risen above 200 after falling for a week as the country's death toll tops 27,000. Russia has recorded another 10,000 new cases, bringing the total number of infections to over 250,000. The US is still struggling to flatten the curve as the death toll in the country surpasses 84,000. The global COVID-19 death count has crossed 297,000 with over 4.3 million infections. Details in this report.
US states are beginning to restart their economies after months of paralyzing coronavirus lockdowns, but experts warn that COVID-19 cases can re-emerge weeks after the reopening, saying America faces the darkest winter in modern history. The WHO has also warned that the world has a long way to go in order to bring the pandemic under control.
Countries, as you've seen, are trying to find a path out and a path towards a new normal, as many people have put it. And we're going to be on that pathway for a long, long time. And as we've seen in some countries, even a small recurrence of disease can cause the need for a serious response in terms of the public health response. So I think we're going to have to remain on alert.
Lesotho, the southern African country, has recorded its first coronavirus case, becoming the last nation on the continent to confirm an infection. Around the world, governments and airlines are considering temporary safety measures to restart their travel. But physical distancing can make flying more expensive.
We are going to have to take whatever measures that are necessary to protect both the travelling public and our staff. And until we get a more satisfactory, effective and timely method of dealing with that to eliminate social distancing, we are clearly going to have to adopt those. But the impact on both the confidence and the ability to travel will be very significant indeed.
In the meantime, fears of a resurgence have emerged in South Korea. Health authorities are calling it a truly cruel virus as cluster infections in Seoul reach 72. China has reported 3 new cases of coronavirus, all of which are locally transmitted.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, the number of coronavirus infections has crossed 35,000 as 1,452 more cases were reported in the last day. The Health Ministry said 33 more patients have died, taking the death toll to 770. The ministry said more than 9,600 coronavirus patients have recovered. Punjab province leads in the number of cases with over 13,500 infections. Meanwhile, trade activities between Pakistan and Iran have resumed after 2 more crossing points were reopened in Taftan. Officials said the activities resumed through Pakistan Gate and Zero Point Trade Gate. The border with Iran was closed on February 22nd due to coronavirus outbreak in Iran. In Sudan, 26 people, including 9 paramilitary troops have been killed during armed clashes in southern Kordofan province in the past 48 hours. It marked the 3rd outbreak of violence this month that could derail the country's transition to democracy. Military officials said fighting broke out this week between armed residents in the city of Kadugli. They said the dispute was over an arms sale and it escalated in the past 2 days. Authorities have imposed a round-the-clock curfew for 3 days to stabilize the situation. Last week, tribal clashes in the province of South Darfur and Kassala left at least 36 people dead and dozens wounded. The fighting poses a significant challenge to efforts by Sudan's transitional government to end decades-long rebellions in some areas of the country. Security forces in Burkina Faso have killed 20 terrorists after they ambushed a military patrol in Yaga province. In a statement, armed forces said 8 soldiers also lost their lives during the fighting near the border with Niger. Meanwhile, the prosecutor for the town of Fada Angorma said 12 terrorist suspects were found dead in their police cells. In a statement, the prosecutor said 25 people were detained by police on Monday. It said an investigation has been launched into the incident. The UN says more than 850 people have been killed and 840,000 displaced since 2015 in terrorist attacks in the country. Libya's UN-recognized government says Khalifa Haftar's forces have attacked a hospital and civilian settlements in capital Tripoli. In a statement, the government said 14 people have been wounded in the rocket attack. The health ministry said the Tripoli Center Hospital will not be able to treat injuries as a major portion has been damaged. It said the situation impedes the fight against the coronavirus outbreak. Meanwhile, the Haftar-led Libyan National Army has denied responsibility for the attack. Libya has been torn apart by a civil war between the GNA and the Libyan National Army since April last year. Turkish and the Russian troops have conducted their 11th joint patrol in Syria's northwestern province of Idlib. The patrol is being conducted in line with the Moscow agreement. In a statement, Ankar's defense ministry said the joint patrol was carried out by air and land vehicles. The patrol covered the M4 highway, which connects the cities of Aleppo and Latakia. The 2 countries agreed on a protocol which urged parties to cease all military actions along the line of contact in the Idlib de-escalation zone. Idlib has long been under siege by Assad regime forces and its allies, and previous ceasefires for the region were affected by violations. Turkey says it has killed 5 militants of the Kurdistan Workers' Party in an anti-terror operation in the Sirnak province. Interior Minister Suleiman Solu said 3 terrorists were killed in an air-backed operation in the Besler-Deriler region, while 2 others were killed in Lais district. He said the provincial gendarmerie command of the province conducted the operation. The Interior Ministry said Turkey will continue to destroy weapon caches and shelters used by the terrorists. In India, 8 migrant workers were killed and 55 others injured in a road accident in Madhya Pradesh state. Officials said a truck carrying migrants collided head-on with a bus on a highway in Guna district. District officials said the truck was on its way to Uttar Pradesh from Mumbai and the empty bus was returning to Ahmedabad. In another incident from the UP, 6 migrant workers were run over by a state bus on a highway in Muzaffarnagar district. Police said the workers had been walking to their hometown in Bihar from Punjab amid the coronavirus lockdown. Last week, 16 migrant workers in a group of 20 were killed after a cargo train ran over them while they were sleeping on tracks in Maharashtra. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. A study has revealed that a third of COVID-19 patients admitted to Scotland's intensive care units did not recover. Scottish Intensive Care Society Audit Group study says out of 472 patients admitted from March the 1st to May the 2nd, nearly 33% died there. The study said over 44% of ICU patients recovered and were discharged, while the rest were still in the intensive care. It said men made up nearly 75% of the people in ICU with COVID-19. It said ICU mortality rate of about 33% for COVID-19 patients is higher than normal death rates for critical care settings. Russia says it has ascribed the deaths of over 60% of coronavirus patients in April to other causes. Moscow's health department said it conducted post-mortem autopsies in all deaths where the virus was suspected as the main cause. The department said over 60% deaths were due to heart attack, leukemia, organ failure, and other fatal and incurable ailments. Russia has the second highest number of confirmed cases with over 242,000 infections and just over 2,300 deaths. Such a low mortality rate has led to the questions over the veracity of Russia's official statistics. Health Minister Tatiana Golikova flatly denied any falsification of statistics to lower the country's death toll. Over 100 people in Mexico have died after drinking adulterated alcohol over the past 2 weeks. This comes as the measures to halt the coronavirus spread has crimped beer production. Officials say states of Jalisco, Yucatan, Puebla and Morelos have reported the fatalities since the start of the month. Authorities say they are conducting investigations to identify the suppliers of the fatal drink. The Cuautla municipality declared a health emergency in the state of Puebla following 17 deaths from the deadly beverages. The Puebla state government said it has confiscated 200 liters of local alcohol and is conducting studies to determine its contents.
It seems they all died after consuming tainted alcohol. That happened in the town of Telixtac in the Axochiapan municipality. The people were arriving to Axochiapan with different symptoms, but all similar, at different clinics and at the hospital, and a lot of them died. They were not properly treated.
Cuba has rejected its inclusion on a list of non-cooperators with the U.S. counterterrorism efforts. In a tweet, Foreign Ministry Chief for the U.S. Affairs, Carlos Fernandez de Cosio, said the Caribbean nation is a victim of terrorism by Washington. He said Washington was complicit in a long list of terrorist acts against Havana. The U.S. State Department said Cuba had refused to extradite leaders of the rebel group, the National Liberation Army, to Colombia. Cuba has also designated the gun attack on its embassy in Washington 2 weeks earlier as a terrorist attack. In Bangkok, an eatery has come up with a creative way to cheer up diners while ensuring social distancing measures are in place. More in this report.
Ever wondered what it's like to dine with a plush toy panda? Customers at Maison Sagan, a Vietnamese restaurant in Bangkok, can now experience this firsthand. As Thailand relaxes some restrictions put into place to prevent the spread of coronavirus, Staff place pandas on some chairs to make sure people don't sit too close to each other.
Because the panda is cute and it is a symbol of Asia. Our restaurant is Vietnamese, it's Asian. That's why I want to use something that symbolizes Asia.
Restaurant owners thought that customers who come alone will feel all the more lonely after being in isolation at home for so long if they had to sit facing an empty seat. Here too, the panda tactic seems to be working.
It's great. The stuffed bear makes me feel less lonely eating by myself, and this acrylic partition also makes me feel safe eating at a restaurant.
Thailand has reported 3,018 cases of the new coronavirus and 56 deaths so far.
President Donald Trump has extended his executive order for another year, barring U.S. companies from using equipment made by Chinese telecom company Huawei and ZTE. Trump signed an executive order in May 2019 that blacklisted the Chinese companies. In November last year, U.S. Federal Communications Commission designated Huawei and ZTE as national security risks. But the companies will most likely continue their limited operation in the U.S. under the license extension by the Commerce Department. The U.S. Energy Information Administration says crude oil imports and exports decreased during the week ending May 8th. The data was revealed in a weekly petroleum status report. The administration said U.S. crude oil imports have declined by over 300,000 barrels from last week. The report said exports averaged about 3.5 million barrels per day, down by 21,000 barrels per day from the previous week. The report also said during the week, U.S. crude oil production decreased by 300,000 barrels per day to over 11.5 million barrels per day. In California, Alameda County has allowed Tesla to restart full operations at its car assembly plant from next week. The announcement comes after Chief Executive Elon Musk called staff back to work in defiance of the shutdown orders. In a tweet, Alameda County Sheriff's Office says Tesla can resume some activities ahead of reopening next week. It said county health officials agreed Tesla can only resume operations if it introduces safety measures for staff. Earlier this week, Musk reopened its only U.S. electric car plant in California and offered to be arrested. Musk said Tesla had filed a lawsuit against the county asking court to remove the order that prevents car maker from resuming production. Britain's Finance Minister Rishi Sunak says the UK is very likely to face a significant recession this year. The UK's economy shrank by a record 5.8% in March as the coronavirus crisis escalated. In an interview, Sunak said the coronavirus has pushed the economy into decline. He said the country is in the middle of a recession. The minister said there is a measured plan for reopening the economy. He said new guidelines have been issued for the safe and secure workplaces.
Reopen all the other parts of our economy as well. I think nobody wants to be furloughed. I don't think people want to be at home. They are actually anxious about their futures and their jobs. They want to have the security of knowing their job is going to be there. That's why we've extended the furlough scheme.
The United Nations says the COVID-19 pandemic will cause the global economy to contract by more than 3% this year. The UN World Economic Situation and Prospects Mid-2020 report says this marks the sharpest contraction since Great Depression in the 1930s. The report said world trade is forecast to shrink by nearly 15% in 2020 amid sharply reduced global demand and disruptions in global supply chains. It said pandemic is expected to slash global economic output by $8.5 trillion over the next 2 years. The report also said over 34 million people are estimated to fall below extreme poverty line in 2020 due to the pandemic. European stock markets continue to tank as concerns mount over the potential resurgence of the coronavirus. London's FTSE 100 is trading over 2% lower CAC 40 in Paris has lost nearly 2%. Frankfurt's DAX has lost over 1.5%. In Asia, Nikkei 225 led the losses, closing over 1.5% lower. Hong Kong's Hang Seng lost nearly 1.5%, while Shanghai Composite closed nearly 1% lower. Meanwhile, the international benchmark Brent crude oil price has gained nearly 3% as OPEC plans to extend its deep output cuts. A strong typhoon has slammed the Philippines' eastern Samar province. Weather agency officials said tens of thousands of people have already been evacuated. Typhoon Vongfong is packing maximum sustained winds of 150 kilometers per hour and gusts of up to 185 kilometers per hour. Fierce rain and wind rattled tin roofs and obscured visibility in eastern Samar. Rescue officials face a dilemma on how to shield thousands affected from the double threat of storm and pandemic in overcrowded shelters. The government weather agency warned that the storm surge may cause potentially life-threatening coastal floods. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. With the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.news.